Musikgenie des 20. Jahrhunderts.
Ein Kaleidoskop eines Menschen.
A universal man.
You couldn't resist him. He was irresistible.
Leonard Bernstein lived 5 lives in the short time that he was on our planet.
It's not a trance, it's a kind of flight. You're lost in the music, and if you're not, then it can't be a good performance. And I mean lost in the music in a sense in which you feel you're composing it as you go along, and it's always a surprise. There are so many surprises anyway, but you yourself have to be surprised at the surprises.
Der an vielen, vielen Ecken und Enden brannte und eben auch andere Leute begeistern konnte.
For those students like myself, we never dreamed, we never realized that a great personality like that could take the time and would have the generosity to simply give so much to the next generation. When I would go to his apartment for a lesson, for example, I had absolutely no idea even from the repertoire, what it was we would study. Today, let's go to the museum. Today, let's go watch a play. Would you like to see a film today? Today, let's study the Fifth Symphony of Tchaikovsky. Come, let's play together at the piano.
My father turned on the television on Sunday afternoon, and I saw this guy they had been talking about, Leonard Bernstein, on television, talking about music, which was so exciting for me. And so my father took me to a young people's concert when I was 9 years old. Leonard Bernstein started talking to me about how excited he was about the music. And he was animated and jumping around and having a great time. And I turned to my father and I said, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to be a conductor.
Okay, now what do you think that music's all about? Can you tell me?
I think I'm a pupil of Bernstein, and these big personalities never die. You can feel when you see a video of Bernstein that he's still there at the Lincoln Center conducting, or in Musikverein in Vienna or in Tanglewood. You feel that he's still around.
Leonard Bernstein, a universal musician with a full bouquet of talents, composer of West Side Story, conductor with boundless passion, a brilliant pianist, and a music teacher of the American TV nation. By all means, the most comprehensive musician of the 20th century. Son of Jewish immigrants from Russia, Leonard was born on August 25, 1918, near the city of Boston. His father is not amused when the youngster announces his wish to become a musician. So Lenny has to pay for his own piano lessons. The 16-year-old plays in jazz bands and likes to party far into the night. He has both an endless number of friends and intellectual interests. From very early on, he fascinates all who meet him.
He had charisma by the bucket load. I can't think of another artist with such personality, such charisma, huge drive, energy that puts anybody at half his age to shame.
That kind of enthusiasm and love for what he did, and it all was real. There was not a phony bone in it. You know, people hated the fact that he jumped around, and it was all real. That's what made it different. It was not for show.
Er hat ihn sehr gerne geküsst. Und viele haben dann gesagt, na, das will ich mal gleich weg. Die anderen haben gesagt, na, das lass doch bitte. Das ist ja immerhin der Schweiß vom Bernstein. Ja, schön auch. Ne? Ich habe ihn gerne so umarmt. Das muss ich sagen, es war was.
My father, he kissed everybody. That was the joke.
Thank you. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Which one's Consuelo?
He would kiss presidents and their first ladies, and I mean, he was a kissing bandit. Well, so that's why it's funny. Because if you didn't remind him, maybe he would have kissed Pope Paul on the lips. You don't know.
He didn't have this sense of distance, personal space that most people have. He was like a big puppy. We would laugh sometimes because we'd be like, oh my God, here he comes, look out.
It's a little hard.
I know, a little tricky, huh? Well, you stay here, okay?
Also, I do the...
Er hat sich wirklich hineinschauen lassen. Er hat sein Herz so aufgemacht, dass jeder fast den Herzschlag gesehen hat.
He said once to Ned Rorem, the American composer, he wanted to be loved by everyone in the world, and Rorem said that's not possible, and Lenny said that's my tragedy.
After he was finished with the concert, his assistant would be waiting in the wings with the silver glass with scotch in it and a cigarette. And so he would have a sip of scotch and some cigarette, and then back out for a bow, come back, same bow, and as many times as he needed to, and then he'd go back and have some more in the dressing room, put on his bathrobe.
Nachts ging's ja richtig rund. Man wusste nie, wann er kam, nach dem Konzert. Und man wusste auch nicht, wie viel er mitbrachte. Und dann musste man eben, ja, improvisieren.
Und dann ging's bis morgens um 3 oder 4 Uhr, weil natürlich auch nach dem Konzert ist er so aufgekratzt gewesen und so hellwach, dass er einfach die Zeit brauchte, um auch erstmal wieder runterzukommen.
He was a terrible insomniac. And this was both a blessing and a curse. It was a curse because he was always exhausted. But the blessing, of course, is that he got twice as much done in his life as the normal person, because he had more waking hours. His average day was almost twice as long as everyone else's average day.
Er war so schnell und so schnellfüßig in seinem Kopf und in seinen Gedanken. Aber egal, ob er 1 oder 2 oder 8 Whiskys gehabt hat, kam immer so ein Wasserfall von Ideen und Geschichten und lustigen Momenten.
Es ist unglaublich interessant, mit ihm über Theologie zu sprechen oder über die Bibel, die er in großen Teilen auswendig kannte, und auf Hebräisch.
Er reiste damals mit einer kompletten Bibliothek. Da waren also 3 Koffer waren schon voller Bücher, weil er immer, ich glaube, 10 oder 20 Bücher mindestens parallel gelesen hat.
Aber auch zum Beispiel, er konnte weite Teile des goethischen Fausts auf Deutsch auswendig.
He spoke English fluently, Hebrew, German, French, Spanish. He spoke Russian. And then I'm sure he could get around, Italian, you know, so.
Das habe ich immer gesagt, Lenny, du bist ein Wanderrabbi. Wo immer er stand, wo immer er ging, und es hatte ein paar Leute, schon dozierte er. Und man konnte immer was lernen. Der Bursche, man konnte immer was lernen von ihm. Der war einfach gut.
Lenny fancied himself a Renaissance man. He thought he was everything except maybe a painter. That was the only thing I think he never claimed to be.
Man denkt über sein Dirigat, das so emotional ist und so mit Gefühl und seine Maniere und seine Art und Weise, wie er gelebt hat. Aber sein akademischen Hintergrund, seine Disziplin, das ist unglaublich. Ja.
You sometimes get the feeling with Lenny that he had so many gifts that it all came, you know, without too much hard work. But actually, he was never afraid of hard work, and he certainly knew these pieces very, very well indeed.
And you just didn't walk up on that box called the podium unless you really knew what you were doing. And there's no two ways about it. You can't sort of know, and you can't wing it, and you can't fake it. There's no way. You have to know, but know, I don't mean just know what the second clarinet is doing. That's peanuts, that's nothing. Know what the composer meant.
Also Leonard Bernstein ist ja eine sehr interessante Figur auch in der amerikanischen Musikgeschichte, weil er der erste komplett in Amerika ausgebildete Dirigent und Musiker ist in dem Format.
1940. After studying music at the Harvard University, the festival at Tanglewood will play a major role in Bernstein's artistic future. There he meets two lifelong guiding stars in terms of conducting. The leader of this festival for young musicians, Serge Koussevitzky, and the conductor, Dimitri Mitropoulos.
I learned for the first time what a conductor does, how he has to study, and this man was really incredible. He knew everything, and he was incredibly passionate. He had an enormous influence on me. He is in my blood to this day. And I said, what should I do? I'm in despair. And he said, you must be a conductor. I said, a conductor? I said, of course, it's perfectly obvious. How do you know? I know. I said, but I can't conduct. I don't know anything about it. Study with somebody.
Those early encounters were so important. Mitropoulos, in so many other ways, because Mitropoulos was gay and was an outsider. He was Greek. He was never really accepted in America. He understood Mahler before most other conductors in America. He made the first recording of Mahler's First Symphony in Minneapolis in 1941. He was phenomenally energetic. Where Lenny got from him his athleticism on the podium. Mitropoulos would jump up and down. He was a very tall man. Lenny was short. And Mitropoulos was really the first gymnastic conductor. And he was an intellectual who read in 5 languages and loved nothing more than to sit through the night discussing the nature of the universe and the existence of God. Koussevitzky, very different. Very different. Not vastly intellectual, not technically the most accomplished musician, but he is an instinctual and an emotional musician who is able to tap into the deep heart of a Sibelius symphony, for example, in the way that few others have ever done. And so Lenny was able to connect with Koussevitzky's musicianship on a very personal level.
He suddenly said, but of course I accept you in my class. I didn't have to play the piano, do anything. Just on the basis of letters and, I don't know, personal, because we obviously loved each other on sight. And so it was. He became my father instantly. We loved each other. And till the day he died in my arms.
The one part is fun, 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 lots of boys, lots of girls, and the other part is actual creative formation through the connectivity that it gives him.
Tanglewood was the fountain of youth for our dad. He loved going back there every summer because his own youth there was so tremendous and fruitful and full of excitement and wonderful memories and music making.
The third influential father figure will be the composer Aaron Copland, since the 30s an American icon. He encourages the young man to apply himself entirely to composing.
When I would come with my new piece or half of a new piece or an idea for a new piece, and he'd say, throw it away, it's warmed over scriabine. Just start all over again, forget it. Or he'd say, that's good.
I think he wanted to see himself as a kind of heir or successor to somebody like Aaron Copland, partly because they were so close, partly because he absolutely loved what Copland's music does. And I think he also found incredibly moving, the fact that Copland's music sounds like, you know, what an American symphony should sound like somehow.
Ich war so neidisch auf seine Lust zu komponieren. Und ich habe das immer schrecklich gefunden, wenn er so gedroht hat, er will eigentlich nur mehr komponieren.
Das große Markenzeichen von Bernstein ist ja, dass man die Musik hört und weiß, das ist Bernstein. Es ist nicht einfach als Komponist so unverwechselbar zu sein. Und das hat Bernstein immer geschafft. Am meisten Spaß macht mir im Divertimento dieser Turkey Trot. Da hat er komponiert, wie ein Truthahn sich so bewegt im Gelände, auch mal hinfällt und dahin kugelt. Und wie er das komponiert hat, einfach klasse.
I love the moment, especially in American music, when popular and serious music blend. And Bernstein was the epitome of this because he not only could bridge that gap and break down that barrier, but he could also do it in a way that was extraordinarily skillful and yet very accessible.
But all the way through, there is a sort of uncertainty about whether he's really any good as a composer.
The times when he composed best and most strongly was when he was working with others. The symphonies date from the time that he was writing musicals in teams. He loved those teams, the Compton and Green and Stephen Sondheim, Jerome Robbins, and all of the others. He loved working almost as a footballer does or must, within a team.
Arthur Lawrence, Jerome Robbins, Stephen Sondheim, Leonard Bernstein. In 1957, this legendary team creates one of the ever greatest successes on Broadway, The West Side Story.
Cool! Go! Crazy! Cool! Go! Crazy! Go!
Lenny had a couple of tunes that he had in mind, some from old shows that were cut out of old shows, but he'd also written the front strain of Maria, and he'd written the front strain of Cool, which of course are the same melodic shape.
Maria, I've just met a girl named Maria, and suddenly that name will never be the same to me.
So I went into Arthur's apartment and went over what they were going to do and talked to him about style. So we just started writing.
Maria, I'll never stop saying Maria.
West Side Story kicked into a certain New York zeitgeist of the time. There were very few novels about this new generation. There were no films yet about this new generation. There was only this musical semi-opera which was looking at what was really happening on the streets and was recreating it in Shakespearean terms. It is the most New York work in any art form, and it liberated the best of Leonard Bernstein.
Meanwhile, my father was writing Candide at the same time, and he ended up writing both shows at the same time, which is so beyond my comprehension. I can't even, and some songs went back and forth between shows.
the scores for Candide, and particularly West Side Story, are still ahead of their time.
Great.
What wasn't together at bar 31?
That's impossible. It's really impossible. I never heard anything so together in my life.
He obviously wanted desperately to make it as a composer. More than anything, he wanted to make it as a composer. But the other thing that he says in his letters, which he didn't generally say elsewhere, to very close friends, he would say, the trouble is, I just love conducting so much. How can I say no to conducting, Mahler's Ninth, if it's going to give me a couple of weeks to compose when I know I'm not going to get anything finished anyway?
By now, Bernstein's world career has gathered momentum, a fiendishly busy conductor. He is increasingly drawn to Europe for his inspiration, the continent of his musical idols, Mozart, Brahms, and Mahler. The Bayerische Rundfunk Orchestra and the Vienna Philharmonic soon become two of his favorites.
Natürlich nicht. Alle Kraft, was Sie haben, bababam, bibabam, 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 viermal. Nein. Nicht reden, bitte. Anhören, das ist sehr wichtig, was ich sage jetzt. Das muss klingen so. Bam, bam, zadam. Alle bitte.
Leonard Bernstein and Gustav Mahler, both pushing the boundaries. Bernstein identified himself with no one closer than this great and long-despised composer.
Bravi! Sigaretta.
Mahler, being Jewish, being a conductor, being a composer, not always being accepted, having difficulties in life. I think the comparison is good with Leonard Bernstein.
When Leonard Bernstein and I would discuss Mahler, I felt as if I was speaking to a composer. That's what the fascinating part is.
I was thinking, why do I get so involved so that I'm a wreck after I finish a movement of a Mahler symphony? I'm out of breath, I'm drenched, I'm shaking, I have a headache, my stomach is up in my throat somewhere. Why not just stand there and beat time and let all this happen by itself? And I realize I can't.
Die Musik Mahlers ist in Wien, sagen wir, mit gemischten Gefühlen aufgenommen worden, mit gemischten Gefühlen bis zur Ablehnung eigentlich.
Ich glaube, es war schon auch, dass er geglaubt hat, er muss für Mahler etwas tun, weil der wurde im Grunde gerade durch die politischen Verhältnisse der Jahrzehnte vorher unterbelichtet.
They were the orchestra, the great Vienna Philharmonic, the great orchestra of a city in which Mahler's music had been banned. Haben Sie nicht alle Diminuendo? Ja. Alle. Aber Sie haben es nicht gemacht.
Am Ende so einer Probe hat ein Kollege gesagt, ich zitiere, Scheißmusik.
And it showed in the rehearsals. They resisted and resisted to a point where I did finally lose my temper because, in God's name, this was their composer from this city.
Ich weiß wohl, dass dies nur Probe ist.
Aber was probieren wir? Die Noten können Sie spielen, das weiß ich. Es ist Mahler, das fehlt. Diese klagende, jedes Tremolo soll Maximum sein. In einer Höhepunkt wie 18 hier. Man kann nicht so spielen. Mahler, es geht nicht. Es ist kein Mahler. Warum probiert man? Es ist nur die Idee zu haben, aber 17. Bitte, I don't care about your 8 Stunden. Wir arbeiten oder wir arbeiten nicht. Wir werden keinen Maler haben.
Ich sehe ihn heute noch vor mir bei einer Probe vor der 9. Und das war im letzten Satz. Da kniete er plötzlich am Boden und es schossen ihm die Tränen über das Gesicht. Er war so bewegt von der Musik. Und das hat schon einen starken Eindruck hinterlassen.
Jeder, der nach ihm das dirigiert hat. Wenn wir das erste Mal, eine 4. Mal, eine 3. Mal, eine 7. Mal mit Bernstein gemacht haben, hat man das immer an dem gemessen. So muss es sein.
He definitely changed the world's view of Mahler. I think he was an absolutely key influence in bringing Mahler absolutely to the center of musical life.
Ah, jetzt haben wir das. Mehr Bogen.
I knew if Mahler were here and heard this performance, I think he would say, "Okay, Lenny."
I hear a sob in this music, as I hope you two are beginning to hear, a strangled sigh that simply sounds Jewish. Not Judaistic, not Hebrew, not Israeli, but Jewish in the most universal sense.
Lenny war so intelligent, dass hat immer gekämpft mit seinem religiösen Hintergrund, mit seiner ästhetischen Welt, mit was ist Glauben für unsere Zeit. Ja? Und sein ganzes Leben, sein ganzer Kampf mit Alkohol, mit anderen Menschen, mit seinem Talent, mit seiner Sexualität, das ist alles ein Teil davon.
You talk about questioning of faith. That is something that my father struggled with and addressed in all of his religious pieces. That's always been there, the struggle between man and God.
I believe in God, but does God believe in me? I believe in any God, if any God there be. That's a pact, shake on that, no taking back.
In my opinion, his greatest work, without a doubt, is the Mass. This, to me, is Bernstein's Mahler 8, where he's bringing all of his belief system, all of the forces, all of the community, all of the dimensions of earth and heaven together.
Is there someone out there? If there is, then who? Are you listening to this song? I sing it just for you.
He had a concept that was to use the traditional Latin Mass, the liturgy in Latin, but then have it commented upon and reflected upon and railed against and objected to etc., by a congregation of some sorts.
I believe in action, I believe in cheese, but doesn't mean nothing to you. Or should I change my key? How do you like breakfast? Do you believe in cheese?
It had a terrible reception, really, when it first came out. It was regarded as really quite unsuccessful.
When he made a mistake, it was always a big one. He never fell off a low rung of the ladder. He always fell off a high one. And that's the sign of an artist.
He did not like to be known as a musical composer, even though he was brilliant at it. His frustrations with that and his many demons in life probably held him back somewhat from ever reaching his full potential, but his full potential was so limitless.
It became very important to him that he write the big piece, the big opera, the big symphony, the big important piece that would define his composing career. And it never really materialized.
It's one thing having adoration from the public constantly, but it's another thing facing your blank sheet of paper.
This desire to be creative and to have the time to be creative, and at the same time, an absolute sort of phobia almost of being without human company, which he craved and needed.
To be sitting alone in a country cottage, as Mahler did, not wanting to be disturbed, that was alien to his character. He was such a social animal.
Gloria Patri, Gloria Filio, et Spiritui Sancto.
Everything he did, he was sharing, he was teaching and learning. And whether he was composing, conducting, having dinner at home with the family, with friends, he was always so curious and engaged and wanting to impart something that he knew that he had to tell somebody.
This old quasi-rabbinical instinct that I have for teaching and explaining and verbalizing suddenly found a real paradise in the whole electronic world of television.
Every bar in this movement is based in one way or another directly on these four notes: 3 G's and an E flat.
3 G's and an E flat.
People have been wondering for years just what it is that endows this musical figure with such potency.
He loved conveying information, you know. He liked showing off the information too, but he loved conveying it, you know. And so he made, I think, a wonderful teacher. I saw all the omnibus shows, anything that he broadcast, I saw long before I met him.
I wrote these 90-minute scripts and had to memorize them and had to go at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever it was on Sunday. And what I was doing was what everybody was watching on television from coast to coast that second.
As the conductor views this score, his eye has to follow all these 12 instruments simultaneously across the page.
I used to be up nights writing, rewriting, cutting, having meetings, and trying to memorize it. And my wife, I remember, would sit there spelling me with friends in reading and memorizing the script. And they would fall asleep, and I'd grab the script out of their hands and do it myself, and just memorize.
Beethoven did not wish the entire orchestra to be playing, and so he dismissed 5 of these 12 instruments. Beethoven clearly wanted the strongest, most masculine utterance he could get.
He did so much to add value to television programming, because what was going on in those early days of television was that they had 3 networks, 3 national networks, but they didn't have enough content. They were desperate for content.
In 1958, 1 year after West Side Story, Bernstein becomes the head of the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. He makes the young people's concerts a condition for his engagement.
And here is Mr. Bernstein.
For us, the gift of having Leonard Bernstein come to us From, as I said, ever since I can remember, through the television, it was a great inspiration.
That's the 1, 2, 3 method. It's like a 3-stage rocket, or like the countdown in a race. On your mark, get set, go. Or in target practice, ready, aim, fire. Or the same thing is true in Mozart's Hafner Symphony. It goes, ready, aim, fire.
Ich bin bei einem Freund gesessen, der ein musiknah war, und der hat gesagt, du, diese Sendung musst du anschauen. Und mich hat das so fasziniert als ausübender Musiker, damals noch sehr jung, dass ich immer wieder, wenn die gelaufen sind, damals noch schwarz-weiß selbstverständlich, dass ich mir das angeschaut habe mit dem allergrößten Vergnügen und habe selber noch sehr, sehr viel gelernt davon.
I do remember sitting in front of the TV and being told to watch this. This is important. And it was important in the 50s in America. Culture was much more important than it is today.
And there was this idea that the middle class was pulling itself up and being more cultured. So the young people's concerts on television fit right into that trend.
It was never sort of, okay, now kids, I'm going to tell you something, you know. He made it always enjoyable, interesting, fun. There was things to look at, visual things. He would play Beatles songs.
I give her all my love, that's all I do. And if you saw my love, you'd love her too. I love her. That's A, all right? That's what's...
The ironic gift that was denied Lenny is singing. He couldn't sing at all. He had a froggy, croaky voice. There was nothing he could do about it.
I think he used my sister Jamie and me both as a test person.
It was really those two, because if they got it, then any kid can get it. Our dad was very interested in the music that we kids listened to, and he always wanted to know what was on the pop music station. So he would turn on the radio and say, let's catch up, meaning let's listen to the pop station and hear what everybody's listening to. And I remember one time we were listening to You Really Got Me by the Kinks, a terrific song that, you know, I was crazy about it. And we're listening to this song and he said, hey, you know, this song is in the Mixolydian mode. Do you know what a mode is? No, we didn't know what a mode was, and he told us all about it right there in the car. And then in the next Young People's concert, what do you suppose the topic was?
What is a mode? Now this one is called Don't Panic. This one is called the Mixolydian mode. It's a major mode, as you can hear, and has one peculiar note in it. See if you can tell which it is. Very fine. And believe it or not, most of the jazz and Afro-Cuban music and rock and roll tunes we hear owe their very existence to this old Mixolydian mode.
I still can't name all the modes, but what was so interesting was just to know the concept of the different scales, and that he brought in so much popular music.
Yeah, you really got me now. You got me so I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, you really la-la-la. Mixolydian. Could you believe it?
Rabbi means teacher. That was deeply rooted within him. He had rabbinic ancestors, and he liked to reach back into that part of himself. That was an expression of an inner Leniness.
So when I teach, I learn. When I learn, I teach. Now they're trying to make me go faster, you see? You have to control that. See, they want to go faster, but no, we can't let it show. See?
The teacher, Bernstein, finds his new domain at the freshly founded Schleswig-Holstein Music Festival. He conducts the festival orchestra, composed of young musicians from all over the world, and he especially loves to share his knowledge with young conducting students.
We've gone from 60 to 80 now.
Es waren also tropische Temperaturen.
Und da haben wir gesagt, auch bei dem Dirigierkurs, wir müssen aufs Wasser mit ihm. Und es war ein Bild, was ich nie vergessen werde. Bernstein saß auf dem Deck und die Dirigierschüler knieten und saßen unten auf den Fußboden um ihn herum. Also es war, ich sag mal, zu vergleichen mit Jesus und seinen Jüngern. Da hat man gesehen, wie sehr ihm diese Jugend am Herzen lag.
Can we take right on that?
And the other thing is, they still don't know how to come out with fortissimo. Because you don't show them. What bar is that?
No.
No, the famous bar, what? Nine. Or let's think of the famous bar 9. And there. All right. What did I do?
Nothing. You just did
tell
this.
me, so I can tell you. I don't want you to imitate.
I know.
I want you to understand why. Do the bar before. Look, do it with me. You have the stick. Look, Ma, no hands. See, what did I do?
You get more of this.
And you hold it and show them where before they do it.
He was always so spontaneous that he'd say, okay, kids, let's have a picnic to the students. And then a picnic would have to be arranged that quickly between rehearsals. It made him feel young again.
That's what you mean, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. You see how I got it?
Yes.
What did I do?
Pretty.
Hey!
Okay.
4.
All right.
All right.
How do I do that without making sure that they don't bump?
You'll do it. Just do it.
Do it. All right.
Do what Daddy tells you.
However, Daddy slowly loses the power of his early years. But he still is touring around the world, and he still comes for outstanding concerts to the Orchestra of Bayerischer Rundfunk, to London, to Vienna.
He was willing to push the envelope and take chances. There were great concerts where he just stopped conducting entirely.
That was a way of saying to the musicians, I trust you completely, you trust me completely. What better thing could there be in the world?
Und als ich ihn dann darauf ansprach, sagte er, ja, also am schwersten wird es dann, wirklich auch die Hände bis zum Schluss unten zu lassen.
I do feel he had an idea of his mortality, and that was also part of that urgency and that sadness that he had in the last year of his life. He went to Japan, he founded the Pacific Music Festival, but it was very difficult for him to do and to participate. He was a very ill man, he was very sick.
My decision has been to spend most of the remaining energy and time the Lord grants me in education.
Let's play the Adagio. Let's skip the scherzo.
What you do get is a sort of sense of resignation almost, and a very strong sense, too, of wanting to pass on what he knows to the next generation.
Can you feel Schumann's heart when he was writing that? Can you imagine what he was feeling? God. What is the number where it's A minor? What do I mean?
What is this all of a sudden? I can't even walk up the stairs. I can't remember. I can't, but that's just for, you know, who needs it?
I've completely forgotten why I stopped. That is the problem of getting old. I mean, 5 years ago, I would know exactly what I meant. I mean, it's old age. I hate it. I hate it.
You watched the physical decline, and that was sad. And it was inevitable, because right to the end, he smoked like a chimney.
I got a message. Lenny wants to see you. The door opened, so there were about 10 people in there. And he said, everybody leave the room now. I have something very serious to speak to Lenny about. And I'm going, oh, no. And I said, what's the problem? And he said, there's no problem. I believe you smoke. These people won't let me smoke. And I'm dying for a cigarette. So I gave him a cigarette, and he lit up, and he went, oh, bliss.
Watch it. Follow us. And to the Barca.
It was shattering at the end to watch with a concert. To see him backstage where he looked half dead. He'd walk out onto the platform, he'd conduct as if his life depended on it and as if there was absolutely nothing wrong with him. Great, great performances. Then he'd walk off and the life would just drain away from him.
Tanglewood, his beloved festival in summer 1990. Bernstein has almost no strength left, even for only half a program.
He had an oxygen tank and a breathing machine, and it was not going well. We could see that he was really in decline. I could see that in the middle of the slow movement, he had a coughing fit. And I thought, you know what? He may just go down right now.
Very interesting, after his last concert at Tanglewood, he went back to New York, and I followed later with the materials and everything. And I walked into his study, and he was sitting at his desk, and he looked almost angelic. And he said, it was a good run. My first concert at Tanglewood and my last.
When I read in the paper, of course it was in the New York Times, that he decided not to conduct anymore, I knew. That's when I knew, uh-oh.
It was deeply moving, of course, to see all of these machines around. But again, very impressive in that we talked a lot about the pleasures of life.
I was in my father's apartment at the Dakota, and I was in the other room. I was watching a football game, I think. And the doctor's son ran in and said, you'd better come. And he had just passed.
I just couldn't believe that I wasn't going to work with him again. The world was a lesser place that day.
Just the sun stopped shining for a minute.
I think he was ready. He said so often in the last years, I'm so sick of Leonard Bernstein, because he had become this kind of industry, you know. He had to travel with this large entourage, and there was always publicity, and, you know, he always enjoyed being famous. He loved it. He loved being famous, but it really became more pressure than fun.
You know, he was a man not blessed with many talents, but cursed with them, I think.
As a genius, and it's not easy being a genius, I wouldn't know, but watching him, he never felt he was doing enough, and that he was living up to his own inner standard, whatever that was.
He couldn't get enough of life, he couldn't live enough life, and yet he tried.
hat nichts ausgelassen.
He believed in excess and loved it.
What remains of Bernstein? The exuberance, the vitality, the vivacity, the sight of him on video, the limitless optimism.
Ein ewiger Zeitgenosse. Solange wir leben, lebt er mit uns.
He left us with a moral to live by and to be better human beings. I don't think there's a greater gift you could leave the world.